your father, let's like into adult life. I know you were a correctional officer and you dealt with things there. How was that phase of your life, that season?
You know, as we delve from, you know, my early beginnings, and then my father, and then we went into Vietnam, and then we went our fathers in Vietnam, and how it affected you and affected me because of their issue. To look at it on a historical basis, I was about 25 years old, and I used to be a courier for a bank, and I would take their bank deposits from their merchants, golf courses, and whatnot, and as a benefit from being a member of that bank, they would have the courier go out, and instead of you going in and making the deposit, the courier will come out and get the deposit from you and then take it to the bank, and then the next day bring your bag back, you know. So that I was that courier throughout the 90s, you know. And
sounds dangerous.
Yeah. And they had locked bags, but the Most High was with me. You know, nobody ever tried to attack me, you know, whatnot. But everybody would say that's dangerous, and I never looked at it that way at that time. But then I thought, wow, there's thousands and thousands of dollars.
And people kill for less.
And they kill for less. And the Most High was with me, and I would have the bags rolled up, you know. So I was at one of the banks, and a white gentleman came in, and he said, "Hey, young man." And then I said, "Yes." He said, "I hear you sing and you do Martin Luther King speeches." I said, "Yeah, people here at the bank tell me they love you here." And he says, they speak highly of you. So all the bank people, the manager and all that, "Oh, Dave, we had him sing at our wedding. We had him sing and da-da-da-da-da. And he sounds just like Martin Luther King." He says, "Really?" He says, "Come in one of the offices with me. I want to talk to you about something." So I marveled at how bold he was to go into the bank, but they loved him. You know, he was bringing in a lot of money. He had his own shop, his own restaurant. And one of his restaurants, he would always have Kevin Costner would come in. And Kevin was big at that time, Kevin Costner, the actor.
He still is. What you talking about?
He still is. But, you know, you
talking about Dances with Wolves?
Yeah, that right. Kevin Costner. As a matter of fact, this was probably right before Dances with Wolves. So Kevin was up there at that time. You know, he was bankable. And so this guy was major. He was major. He was prided himself on being Irish and Italian. You know, he was both or whatnot. So 10 years older than I. And he set me down in the bank's office as if he was running the thing. And I marveled at how the bank just, "Oh, yeah, go. So we're talking. He says, "You're a guy, Martin Luther King." And I said, "Yeah." He says, "So you're a fan of Martin Luther King?" I said, "Oh, yeah, all my life." I said, matter of fact, at that time, it was 94. I said, "I just spoke for Rosa Parks this year." "Yeah, really?" I said, "Yeah, I spent 3 hours with her on 2 occasions. We spoke, we talked about everything." He said, "That's wonderful. Do you know why Martin Luther King got killed?" I said, "Oh, yeah, the race question. I mean, he was, you know, because of racism and then this and this. He said, "Sounds good, but that's not why he got killed." And I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, and I'm trying to be an authority, you know, because I do King's speeches.
You've done your homework.
Done my homework. And it's funny how we can think we've cornered the market, and then Most High allows somebody to come in to humble you. It's changed my whole thought process, how I read about true history, the hidden hand.
Oh, yeah.
So he says, "Now, you know I'm a rich man." I said, yeah, you don't let us forget. He says, "And I come from old money." And he says, "Old money knows a lot of secrets." So now I know I'm having one of those moments that I'll never forget. Those moments that you'll tell your kids, you'll tell folk years. And now what is this, 30 years ago? And I'm still telling the story. He says, what happens is Martin Luther King did not get killed for the race question, or else he would have gotten killed a lot earlier. He would have gotten killed way before 1963, I Have a Dream. There were people that wanted to kill King, but King had security. There were some folk that said big time folk that no. And then I knew later why. You know, that's even a whole other story. If we could say he went rogue, I'll just put it ...
Yeah.
Okay. So he was explaining King got killed for socioeconomic reasons. I said, "Well, no. He said, just hear me. He says, Old money knows how and who. He says, just hear me, young man. So when you go out and you do, King, because I hear you doing well, know the real truth. War is money. And when there is a dearth of money in an economy and it needs to be infused, a war is created. A war is put on. And when you put on a war, all those who make your boots, your bullets, your uniforms,
toilet paper, everything.
Everybody gets paid. War is money. Just like building the prison systems, you got to get somebody in there so that what you built will not be in vain, so everybody gets paid. And I know about that all too well. 1 inmate, 11 jobs.
Wow.
And you as an officer, you mess with the inmate, you mess with recidivism. Those 11 people, they coming after you.
Yeah.
Which is what you heard when I preached.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So he says, Dr. King, when he was talking the race question, he was allowed to do so to the point that even they were talking about him and Dr. Spock running on the 1968 ticket. Dr. Spock being the president, Dr. King being the vice president. True. I said true. But when King started to veer off and talk about the war, now and then he talked about taking the money from the 1% and distributing it out so that every man can have a working wage, a living wage. There will be he was trying to eradicate poverty. So you're trying to stop the war. Why? Because the disproportionate numbers of blacks that were going in, like we just discussed earlier.
Yeah.
You're a second-class citizen in your country, but when it comes time to be drafted, you're first class. And Dr. King saw the disparity in numbers when it came to black men versus white men. He says, wait a minute. You treat us like crap in our country, but you want us to go defend this country that does nothing for us, enslaved us, make us to know that we're second class, third class, but we're the first to be drafted. And if you got money, you can ROTC, run over to Canada, if you got money. And he said many of the rich white boys were doing that.
Or like Bush joined the Air National Guard.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo. So Dr. King decided, I'm going to speak on this disparity because we're all being carted in like animals to go fight for something that does not fight for us.
Yeah.
Which is what Muhammad Ali said at that time.
I was just thinking of him, but I didn't want to interrupt you. Yes.
No Viet Cong ever called me nigger.
Yeah.
So Dr. King started to mess with the social economics. Then he started to say, we're going to do that march on Washington, that second march. They had to get him before he got there.
What year was that? It was 63, right?
That was the second march on Washington was 68.
When was the first one?
63.
Okay. I got to tell you something about that.
Okay.
I'll interrupt you.
Okay. So when he started going to Mississippi and Arkansas and all these, and then he started going to Appalachia, he started going to the Hispanic sections of he started to say, we're going to open this thing up to not just the struggles of black folk, but poor folk. So now it doesn't just have a face of a black person. It has the face of America. Yeah. So now he's saying, let's get into the pockets of the 1% and let's spread it out so that every man will have a living wage. There will be no more poverty. Yeah. The 1% said, this is what this man is telling me. The 1% said, he's trying to affect the war. He's speaking out against the war. Then our 1%, and then the 99% wants to come get him before April 1968, the second march on Washington. And so he said the word went out, get him before. So there's a video out of King right before he left, and he's at a church. And it's a homemade video. And he's telling you how the whites in this country were given land and given this and given that to mechanize
like
the land.
Homestead Act?
All of those things, right.
Yeah.
And how the GIs came back from the war and they were given stuff. That's how the suburbs were built. But blacks weren't given these loans, and he's talking truth and facts. And then he says, so that's why we're going to Washington, D.C. to say, where's my check? When he said that, as he's saying it, the plans were put in place that if we allowed him, because social economic, he says, so your boy was killed because he was getting into the pocket of the rich.
A white dude told you that, huh?
White man told me that in 1994. He said King was killed because of social economic. And since then, I've read and talked, it was social economic.
Have you heard of the term the industrial war machine?
Yes.
I don't remember which president it was. He talked about that. He actually, in his final address to the United States, it's online, he was talking about the industrial war machine. He gave a warning. I forget which president it was. Have you ever seen that video?
It wasn't Wilson, was it? Woodrow Wilson during World War I?
No, it was
later than that.
Maybe World War
II.
So
it would have been Roosevelt or Truman.
I'll find it and I'll send it to you. But you could just a person to look it up online. Just industrial war machine president warning. Or YouTube search that. It's amazing because he explains exactly what you said, that there's powers that are not governmental, not of elected officials, that are starting to have a strong influence on government policy and war, and they're using it. They're monetizing war, and I'll show you that.
Yes.
But one thing, just an interesting fact that I learned that blew my mind, because I was actually doing studying when I was teaching a cinematography class. It's Black History Month. I had the students. You had to make a 1 to 3 minute video about a Black history, a story, because this is every month. Black History Month, we do Black History. The next month, March, I think, is Women's History.
Right.
So we have to do the same thing for Women's History. Then we do Hispanic, Latin. So this is Black History Month, and I said 1 to 3 minute video on a Black historical event, person, people, something, but it has to be obscure. Don't give me Michael Jordan. Don't give me Oprah Winfrey. Don't give me Martin Luther King. No disrespect, but we need something. I want you to surprise your classmates and surprise me.
Unsung heroes.
Yeah, and some of them did the Red Tails. The fighter pilot.
Of course.
Yeah, I actually met some of them. My nephews, my little nephews met them, and they're all giddy too because my sister had them watch the movie about them. Like they're the most decorated fighter squadron.
That's right.
But what I was saying is that one of my students educated me, and I went down a rabbit hole. They did a 1 minute, maybe a 3 minute video on the last slaves in the United States. Slavery was made illegal when? 1863. And since they started freeing slaves, right? Guess what year the last slave plantation was shut down?
865. Was it Juneteenth?
No. My family got free on Juneteenth.
Okay.
That's why but no.
In Texas, okay.
No. When it's going to blow your mind. You can look it up. 1962. They still had active slave plantation. They're living in chicken coops.
Was it Louisiana or South Carolina?
I think it was Louisiana. You could look it up. They actually sued. The Supreme Court refuses to hear their case. The family's still alive. Like one of them is still alive right now. And the way they found out there was no more slavery is, there was no social media back then, right?
Right.
So Martin Luther King had grassroots people driving vehicles telling, hey, we're going to march on Washington, 63, blah, 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 and this, that. They ran into a full-on slave plantation. Like a real one that existed.
This is powerful.
Yeah, you could look it up. Look it up.
Please. What is it again? It's
not, I'll show you once we get off. But it's you could see anyone could Google.
I need to
date
add that
of last slave plantation.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sitting there, and this is a 15-year-old white kid educating me on this. I was like,
look at that.
He goes, Mr. Tenney, I got something. And I was like, here, check my video out.
That's powerful.
And I was like, wow. And he goes, how come we don't learn about this in school? I said, thank you. He said, then these kids, man, I had them so worked up. I had a lawsuit against this. This is a school district that when I was doing stuff like this, they told me you got to go. I told you about that, right?
Yeah.
These videos are supposed to be shown on school.
Right.
The school banned it. They banned it. They said, no, you're not showing.
This was that district you told me about?
That district that I was in the lawsuit with. It's resolved. Probably in about a week, guys. I could talk about it more or two on the podcast because Let's put it this way. I'm getting paid for damages. Let's put it that way.
Get what you need. Get what you need.
Yeah, reparations. My buddy, my friend Steve's like, you're getting your reparations, Kenny. But yeah, so they were on the slave plantations, and there's actual video footage when of them getting interviewed in the 70s and the 80s. And the kid and one of the guys was talking about they literally lived in a chicken coop. The slave time, the whips, just how you see back in slavery times. And one guy was explaining that because that lets you know the federal government was even enforcing it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It was like almost that's why Texas kept my family for 2 years after slavery. But this guy was explaining, and this hit me so hard. They put the chicken coop in a tree right there by the chicken coops where they lived in. No, there's no padding. They slept on the floor, and they worked the fields all day. You know what? Freaking 18-hour work days or whatever they did. And the guy, I'll show you footage of this. This guy's talking about how his father had heard from someone, because it was so off the main road, these plantations, had heard that that something has changed with slavery. They weren't sure. So he went to go
100 years late.
He went to go inquire. They caught him, and they hung his father from the tree in front of his house and left him there to decay. Just left him. Leave him in the open. So he'd wake up and work in the fields, and his father's hanging he'd wake up in the morning, his dead father is hanging from the tree. And he'd go work in the field and come home, his dad's there. Decaying, you could smell the decomposition, just everything that comes along with that. He didn't go that far, but that's what what happened. Yeah. And I was like, that is such an evil,
of course,
fear tactic. But it's
scripture.
I wouldn't do that to a dog.
Of course.
If I got mad at you and you had a dog and say I wanted to kill your dog, probably back in the day when I was being run the street, I might have shot your dog just to get you. I would not hang your dog in your front yard for you to stare at and force you to.
Sadistic.
It's sadistic. Thank you. It's sadistic. But I'll show you more about it. I don't mean to go down that path because this is talking about you.
I want to know.
Yeah. These kids blew my mind. I learned that the first person to the North Pole was black. Don't get me started.
Henson.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know. Yeah, dude, there's so much more. Yeah, so but the one that's what blew me away. I was like, wait, there were still slaves. So my dad was alive, and there were slaves.
Of course.
Wait, so 63. What year were you born?
69.
6 years before you were born, there were still slaves.
Yep.
I think. What year did we go to the moon?
69.
Okay, I'm about to say
a few months before.
All right, yeah. Well, I mean, look how close.
We were sitting up watching it.
Yeah. There are hidden figures hiding these women because whatever still had slaves.
Oh, of course.
And the Supreme Court will not hear it. And that's what makes me upset. And I'm not making this political. We'll go back to you. Yeah. That's what makes me upset about Clarence Thomas.
Of course.
How could you not hear this case? How could you not hear this case?
But when there's self-hate can do a lot of things. What did they say about the one who was
Leave
passing?
Michael. Don't go on Michael Jackson. Don't you talk about Michael Jackson.
No,
don't you talk about what he did to his face.
That's my boy. That's my boy. I'm going
there's some help
somewhere else.
Some self issues there.
I'm going somewhere else. Who was supposed to have been the mastermind to the murders of King, John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers? Who was the mastermind that they say?
Oh, of killing those people.
Of having them killed. The head of the
CIA?
The other one, the other alphabet group, starts with an F.
FBI?
You know what they said about him. It's a book out on him. He was passing. The one that said we have to get rid of, that Martin Luther King is the most notorious liar in the United States. That was in Time magazine. And then also...
Oh, you're talking about the guy who we made a holiday after now, right? He's the most notorious liar? Is that that much of a turn to make?
Exactly.
Okay.
And this guy invented COINTELPRO. And he said, we got to make sure we destroy the Black Messiah. All that going on. And they find out he was passing. And you know who I'm speaking about.
He was passing.
That he was passing for.
Oh, yeah.
It was the ultimate in self-hate. You know, this guy was, presidents were afraid of him. We know his name, J. Edgar Hoover.
Yes, and he was a weirdo himself.
Of course.
But if you get a chance, let me tell you, I don't mean to go down the rabbit hole.
Of course.
Of what used to be conspiracy theories, but now they're conspiracy facts.
Of course.
Have you ever heard of MK Ultra?
Of course I have. Of course I have.
And Charles Manson's connection. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That would blew my mind because I used to believe that conspiracy theories was associated to mental illness. I was like, there's something wrong with you. But now
conspiracy reality.
Yes, it becomes conspiracy reality. Yeah. Yes, because when I learned about MK Ultra and there's another one too, Kennedy. Joe Rogan talks about this a lot on the podcast. It's past the years of
where we can now know they can open it up.
Yeah, even Biden won't open it. He's read it, not open it because they know. They know like
Same
this.
with King.
What could you do? What? And it's crazy because
there's a book you can get that opens up a lot of that. A guy wrote about that.
Yeah. Yes.
And it blew my mind, and I refer that book out.
He's an former FBI guy, right?
Yes, this guy used to work, and then when I told, and I'm neither Republican or Democrat,
or he might be CIA.
This guy, when I tell him about the book, the liberals, they say, "Oh, don't listen to him because he was just a conservative guy." I said, "But his facts,
his facts, you can't deny the facts.
The facts are the facts." And I stood at the. Have you been to? The grassy knoll. I stood there. I got pictures of the grass. I mean, it's an eerie feeling, but you can see. I see the spots, the X on the road, on the street where the shots rang out, and you see the overpass, and you see the hospital where he's taken. When you get there, and then you read that book, you match it. You see the Texas Book Depository. You see everything. It's an eerie feeling, but when you read that book and put all the players in place, it makes every bit of sense.
Yes, and there's also witness accounts that they don't push into the mainstream of they heard a bullet over here, a shot. But one thing too is that Joe Rogan talks about this a lot on his podcast. He's obsessed with Kennedy.
Of course.
This whole thing because he doesn't believe, and he brings a good point because Rogan and I, one thing we have in common besides jiu-jitsu, he does jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
Is that we both love hunting and firearms and stuff.
You know
like
him
that.
personally?
No, but actually one of the guests on our episode 1. He's like very good friends. Rogan actually talks about him. His name's Brent Littell.
Okay.
And Brent, he was actually the guest on the first episode of this podcast.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, no, he actually was Joe Rogan's jiu-jitsu instructor for no-gi. People who understand jiu-jitsu know what no-gi means, but I'll explain that. I won't go down that road. But he's like, look, anyone who's ever shot a firearm and hit something, because remember they got that bullet they said they took out of Kennedy? You ever see a bullet looks like once it hits something?
Flat.
It's flat. It's distorted.
Right.
It was a clean bullet, like someone pulled it off of the round.
Of course.
The cart, and he goes,
to be the magic bullet. Right?
Yeah.
Hit.
Yeah, and he goes, the bullet itself, it doesn't match up.
Yep.
And he goes, and it's not like movies, like that. You can see the Hollywood influence because in movies like, oh, I've been shot. Wait, hold on, let me get the bullet. The guy's like, tink, and drops it in. A lot of the times the bullet shatters too.
Right.
I mean, you're talking like say like a precision rifle, right? For shooting distance. I mean, you're looking like over 1,300 feet a second. It's going supersonic.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It just doesn't. It's bullcrap. It doesn't pass the sniff test. Course. My point. But I'm sorry. Let's get back to you, man. I got to steer back in because
so I'm gonna go.
We're going. And we got to talk about doing another podcast with you.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
Like I want to set this up, man. Where because you have a lot of knowledge and historical knowledge, not just world history, but of United States history. Yes. And you're a theologian. You have correct me if I'm wrong. You have a bachelor's degree in theology.
Yes.
Master of Divinity.
Master, we'll have that.
We'll have a master.
Going to the doctoral program in June.
And going to the doctoral program in June. And your languages you've studied are Hebrew, Aramaic, years in Greek. Yeah, I mean, dude, you're a gold mine. You're a gold mine of information. But going back to how you're educated on Martin Luther King and you're 25 years old and you learn these things, let's go back to that, if you don't mind.
So when he told me that he educated me on something, and I didn't know the social economic ramifications of this man that I so love because my great-grandmother, and that's the genesis of where I gave you how I got here. My father abandoned me, and I showed you that site. We never had a solid relationship, although I would spend the night at his house, go to his house in the summertime to take care of my sister. Him and I never had. his wife would always play interference, tell me bad things about him. And I thought, why would she tell me bad things about my father? But the goal, as I found out when I got older, it was to keep me and my father from getting close, because she wanted him for her daughter and herself. She had to run interference. She told me horrible things about my father and their relationship that you wouldn't, that's between you two. Why would you tell his biological son about bad things to get me to dishonor and dislike my father? And so that I wouldn't want a relationship with him. But she did that on purpose. That's because upsetting. How things happened last December 21st when he died. I'm still grieving, and I have not really dealt with it. He just passed away.
Sorry for your loss.
Thank you. 11 months ago. And I found out on Christmas Day. They said, your dad died 3 days ago. And I was told not to come to the funeral. And I know that whatever he left behind, they got the monies, my sisters, and they made sure. She said, if you come, the police will be there. So that's all on another podcast. So I'm still dealing with that.
My Stimpy, the woman, ex-Jehovah's Witness.
Okay.
Her father died. They wanted her to be Jehovah's Witness. She wouldn't. When her father died, they told her she was banned from her own father's funeral. Yep. I couldn't even wrap, for religious reasons, I could not wrap my head around that, man.
It's the hardest feeling in the world.
She cried so hard.
Of course.
All I did was, there's nothing that you could say to someone like that.
Because I can't hug him. I can't, even though he didn't love me, and I would try to call him. I tried to have a relationship. He pushed me away, pushed me like how your dad talked to you, but at least your dad apologized. My father never apologized. Never. And I tried, and for them to do me the way they did me. So we'll pause there. That's the paternal route. But the maternal route is where I am to this day. Because I tell people when I go out and speak across the country and parts of the world, I was raised by my village was my great-grandmother, my mother, and my aunt. Because of what my father chose not to do, my uncle, my abusive Vietnam uncle, and he was my uncle through marriage, and then my alcoholic uncle, bloodline uncle, my mother's brother. They helped. These were my villages, and the elders and the deacons and the deaconess at church. This is where my village was. They saw these gifts and talents that the Lord had given me as a child, and they're the ones that cultivated it. And when Mrs. Parks asked me, how did you learn these speeches, word for word, how you speak? You sound just like my pastor. And I told her, it was first, number one, the Most High. He gives you these gifts. And we're a clean slate. And he puts these things on us. We're like a branch pulled from a tree, rough all around the edges. And he gives us the knife. And we're to use the knife to craft and cultivate that branch and to make it a piece of cleared wood to use it for whatever purpose that is needed. Mm-hmm. So he gives each and every one of us gifts and talents, just like Matthew 25, 14 through 30. And we are to be caretakers of these gifts. Because if we don't, he's going to come again. He's going to ask you, what did you do? Well, my father wasn't in my life, Lord. No excuse. I gave you that because I knew. I'm omniscient. I know everything. I knew your father was going to do that. I knew this, but I gave you those gifts and talents so that you can lift other people up. And I gave you that strength. I don't put on you more than you can bear. So I gave you that strength. I gave you those gifts that if you used it and trusted me with it, I would pour into you and others will be saved by your testimony because you dared to trust me and you dared to use those gifts for my glory. And this is what my great-grandmother, who was the most wonderful person in my life because she saw what my father did do. She saw the brokenness of my mother to not get out there and use her gifts. My mother was the songbird. There's pictures all on Facebook of my mother at 7 years old leading the adult choir. She was the songbird, the lead singer. She was the prodigy. So when Gladys Knight and my mother around the same age, when Gladys Knight was doing her thing as a little girl, or Natalie Natalie King, Nat King Cole, Natalie Cole, Nat King Cole's daughter. My mother was the same age group. My mother was a child prodigy as a singer. My grandfather wanted her to do, her father wanted her to do jazz. But my grandmother, who passed at 10 years before I was born, she wanted her to use her talents for the church. So my mother was that kid. So, but when my grandmother died, my mother was 9 when her mother died. They did something, that nurturing part. So I told you, she got with my father while she was living with my great-grandmother because her father, his wife, rejected her. So she's living there, broken. She goes for the first man that shows her love because the man she loved, her father, took his love away. So now my father's, okay, baby, this. So she gets pregnant. My great-grandmother, my great-grandfather, what I found out all these years, wasn't my biological great-grandfather.
That's very yeah, I had that happen with my brother. I have a brother. I don't talk about him. He's 10 years older than me.
Okay.
Yeah, we found out that he was not he's my half brother. We thought we had the same dad.
Of course.
But we always had a feeling he was different because he was not just built different, he behaved different than my sister and I.
Okay.
But sorry, continue.
Did he look like you guys?
Kind of similar, me and my mom.
Okay.
When people see my mom's side of the family, they see us, we look the same.
Mm-hmm.
To black folks, no.
Okay.
Yeah, like I had hair. My hair would be like curly, long before Jesus took that. Thanks a lot, Jesus.
All right.
But
I saw the picture.
But my brother, he had just had a fro.
Okay.
Like, and he was just like you, just jacked for no reason.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's not. You ever heard Charlie Murphy talk about stuff like that?
Of course,
He's like, man,
of course.
He said, these dudes jack for no reason, man. Don't even lift weights. They got 6 packs. Yeah.
Right. That's that. Yeah.
But sorry, go ahead.
That's deep. We got a lot to talk about. I was watching a picture, looking at a picture, and I was one of those kids that always read a lot. Go to the library. My library card was always distorted. I always had to get new ones. Get all these books, put them in my backpack, climb my treehouse, and that's where you'll find me.
Wow.
And I would have a treehouse, and I'd be reading.
I never read.
Oh, man, I was a library. And you would hear me singing. The drunks would come, who's doing that sing? So I'd be singing, reading, then I would be doing these speeches, imitate Martin Luther King, which is things I do today. And that's how it started. And I would always, if I'm not fighting on the streets, because we would get the gloves out and fight, I was always beating up the bullies, David, they're messing with, come on. And I'd have my men, watch a lot of TV. My men, we'd come and we'd fight the bad guys. And it was always somebody older. Mm-hmm. Or we would be popping wheelies on the bikes, playing with our sling guns, shooting the Doberman pinchers and stuff like that.
Or anything that walked by.
Anything that walked by. We would put light thread around the tree and the handles on cars, so that when you're walking under the tree, if this tree is here and the car is parked here and there's the walkway, we put light thread there. So when the drunks will be coming to walk, what is going on? And we just laugh. We'd be up in the treehouse. We did all. Dude, I was all boy.
You had to do the card in the tire, right, to get the motorcycle engine sound when you ride your bike. You ever put a car?
Oh, of course. Of course. I don't know how you know that. Oh my God! I thought that was just a '70s thing, but I know you were born in the '70s, right?
Yeah, that's not. Why? Hey, don't make the age stuff about me, player. I'm single right now, ladies and gentlemen. I was born '76.
Same as my little sister. Okay, I remember that year very well.
Yeah, we'd ride. Yeah, I'm like, oh man.
Of course we had to do that when you pop in the wheelie. So I was all boy, but there was a side of me that I had to learn, and I loved to sit back and listen to the old folks talk, where they would always tell me, "Get out of here and stop minding grown folks' business. Get out of here." And I would listen to my great-grandmother as she'd tell her stories, and I was the only one to listen because my mother, my aunt, my uncles, then the kids on my level, my great-grandmother's great-grandkids, they didn't want to listen. I was the only one, and that's what serves me today. So she had a picture of her and of my grandmother, her daughter, and she died 10 years before I was born, 58, 59. And so she would be sitting on the, and she looked like Tonto, Long Ranger and Tonto. She has an outfit on. She looked like Tonto, real light complexion lady. And I would look at her. And I knew my grandfather, Frederick Johnson, just passed away at 98 a few years ago, 2016. He was brown complexion. Brown complexion. And I thought, And I'm about 7, 8. And I'm looking at the picture. And I'm looking at my great-grandmother. She's brown complexion. And my grandmother was light-skinned. And I looked at my great-grandfather. He was dark-skinned. So as a 7-year-old, I said, Mama. I called my great-grandmother Mama as well. She said, what, boy? I said, why is my grandmother so light and you're brown, you're in the middle, and my great-grandfather, so she starts looking at me. She starts doing that. And my Pops, he's a very mean man, and he was the custodial guy at the church, and he was very surly, very mean. Pops, can I help you with your ladder? No! And he was real, born in 1899.
Oh, sure.
And I used to always say that name, December 27th, 1899. So he just made it in to the 19th century.
Yeah.
And I would tell everybody his age, he'd get so mad at me. But I was proud of that. My great-grandfather was born in 1899, you know? So when I looked at, and she said, go outside and go play. So I went to go play. But then I'd come back again. Mama, I look at Pops outside, and I look at this picture. So one day she just got tired of me asking. She said, you're the only one. Your mother when she was little, your aunt, because my mother's the youngest, your aunt, and from 1938, my uncle, 1940. See, I knew all the dates. They told me come to, and that's how I do what I do now with the speeches and all that. I knew the dates. I knew the history. 1938 was her first grandchild. Then 1940, my other uncle. 1944, my aunt. 1950, my mother. She said none of them ever asked. Then the kids that came out of there, and I'm the 6th of the great-grandkids. None of them ever asked.
Here you come.
But that's all because she said, you different. You just love to be around me. Why? I said, because I love you, Mama. See, I had convulsions, grand mal seizures. It started at 6 months. My mother, single mother, she changing my diaper and then she, what? She runs across the street to my great-grandmother because they put her out because my great-grandfather said, she can't live here. She got pregnant. She knew the rules. So we lived across the street under Aunt Bertha. Mm-hmm. So my mother, what's wrong with my son? And I'm, and my great-grandmother says, that's why I love her. She said, Marilyn, he's having one of them spells. That's what the old folks call it, spells.
Spells.
She's from Tennessee. She said, Jacob, the 1938, my drunk grand-uncle, love him with all my heart, she said, put the stopper in the bathtub and pour some cold water. Then go get some ice from out the freezer. That's when it was the silver ice that you pull the lever to get the ice out. That's back in the old days. She said, get the ice out, put it in the tub. Then she said, get the vinegar, pour the vinegar in there. And then she said, and when I developed teeth, now this is with no teeth, but when I got teeth, she had him put the spoon in, turn it upside down to keep me from biting my tongue.
Oh, wow.
I had them real bad. And she said, get the baby. So my mother, she said, give it, because my mother was a teenager when she had me.
Yeah, yeah.
So she would take me and put me in and have my head out and put the body in. And I'd come right out of it.
Wow.
She said, who needs phenobarbital, which is the tall medication that they would give me? She said, I don't need none of that mess. We're going to do the natural stuff. So when they would take me to the hospital, the doctor would, is there an old person in your house? My mother said, my grandmother, she said, the vinegar remedies. She said, but it worked. He come out of it every time. He says, your son is going to be epileptic. I want you to know that. That's what they told me. If he has it past 5, how long has he had it? She said 6 months. He says, and he's 3 now. If he has it past 5, he's going to be an epileptic. And this is what you need to do. So I would go so many times a year to the hospital with other grand mal seizure kids. And I would stay overnight to get the brainwave scans.
Yeah.
And my mother would leave me and I would cry. And they would put the Beatles. It was some stuffed characters of the Beatles. And they would put that in my bed, I remember.
Yeah.
And so it was already said that I was going to be epileptic. So my great-grandmother said, we're going to pray that out of him because man says that. But if God says, this is why I was so close to her. This is why when you watch my videos, my interviews, I speak of her. My CD, her. Told Mrs. Worzel Parks, her. It's my great-grandmother that put me in the path that I'm in now. She's the one that made me see the gifts and talents and said, boy, you don't use them, I'm going to whoop your butt. Before God get to you, I'm going to whoop your butt. And I tell that story to the young people and the parents, and they start laughing. But here it is. So I came out of it. My last one was at the age of 5. And I had just graduated Head Start. And that night, I had a big, bad one. And my great-grandmother grabbed me. She put the spoon, my uncle put the spoon in my mouth, I remember, but I'm 5, and she picked me up, and she held me and rocked me. While my mother, she couldn't take it. She went out to a club, trying to be young. You know, she just couldn't take it. So it was my great-grandmother that took care of me. When my mother was out doing her thing, and she was a great mother, she taught me the love of God, my mother. She taught me how to use my musical gifts because my mother had it. I got it from my mother. So I would travel all over as a little boy, emulating what my mother had done 20 years earlier. And I was singing everywhere because I saw my mother do it. So when my sister came too, that's what we saw. My aunt played, my mother sang. So when my mother would sing from place to place, from pastor to pastor, they loved this single woman. And I would get up when I learned to tell time. I could remember I was 3, 4, and that's with the digital clock. And I could remember I would come out and and I look and it'd be 3:42, the clock, boop, bloop, bloop.
I remember those. Yeah, the little flipping things.
And I'm coming out and I got to be 4, early to middle 70s. I come out and I have the footies. It was before Under Rules came out. So I had the footies that button right here that came all the way to foot.
My sister's
She was right. And so 70 specials. And I'm walking to the bathroom and I'm seeing the pastor sitting across from my mother. You know, my mother's on one couch and on another couch. What? And that's when and then I said, wait a minute. But in the daytime, I see him when he's with. So that's when you start putting things together. They liked my mother. My mother was a single parent, cute woman, sang, and that's when you find out the other things. This is why I didn't want to be a pastor when they all told me you're going to be one because you see it in you when I was a little boy. But I rejected it, and I fought against it because I didn't like the examples that I saw. So my great-grandmother said, don't you focus on those things. You better use what you got. However the Lord wants to use it, you better use what you have.
Yeah.
So I looked. Of my boyfriend. I said, who? I'm going to tell you the story, but I don't want to hear about it no more because you keep asking. You're the only one to ask. And I may be dead and gone, and I want you to know this. Sit down. Yes, ma'am. So I sat down, and I listened, and she said, it's in Tennessee. And I liked him. He liked me. And he's real light. One of his parents was white. He's colored, though. He's real light. And he got me pregnant. And I said, and I just stopped because we all knew Clyde Perry was our great-grandfather. But I just the meanness that he treated me, and just the gut discerning feeling. She had discernment. She said it was passed on to me. It was just something there that he didn't treat me like I was his pedigree, like the bloodline. It was something different when you know they ain't yours.
There was actually enmity between you two.
Bingo. With all of us, we just couldn't get caught. And everybody was just, well, he just mean. But with me, it was just a different mean. Like, you don't belong to me kind of mean.
Yeah.
So that's what made me, because she would ask me when I was older, grown man, why do you keep asking? I said, Mama, because I just felt a disconnect with him. I loved him, but he didn't love us. And he did. He helped me. I said, but he didn't love us as if we were. And that's not saying because my father, I was his own, he didn't love me. But it's just something there.
Yeah.
And she said, this man, Charles. I said, that's his name? Charles. He got me pregnant. And when I told him I was pregnant, he left. Didn't see him again. And I said, so then what happened? She said, about 2 years later, 1919, I'm in the backyard and I'm playing with your grandmother. And she's running around because she was born 1918. See, I knew all February 15th. I knew all the dates. She playing around, and all of a sudden, I look up at the gate, and there's Charles. And he's looking at the gate, and he's looking at her, and she looking just like him. See, no one in the family knew this story. I had to tell people. My aunt, born in 1944, who helped to raise me. My uncles, they knew, because they never thought to ask. It was not important to them, but to me it was.
Yeah.
You see, when something is piped into you, it's just what it is. So I knew to think like that. I knew to ask. And I said, what did you do? He said, is that my daughter? She said, yeah, it's your daughter, but it's not your daughter. I'm with a man that takes care of me, that's not embarrassed of me, and he has taken on my daughter. And that's his daughter now. His name is Clyde. He says, well, I'm moving to Chicago. If you ever need me, I'll be in Chicago. And he left. She said, that is your real great-grandfather. His name is Charles, and he's half white. And I said, well, where is he? He was somewhere in Chicago. And I said, but that was 1919. Mama, do you know? And she wouldn't tell me anything else. How am I going to find that? A Charles, light skin.
In Chicago.
1919. Never. But that is what happened to many black folk.
Yeah.
Post-slavery.
Yeah.
And we're not going to even go into this podcast. When you say the unsung heroes, that's what I like that you did with your students, because I champion that when you talk about none other than William Steele. You ever heard of him?
No, it doesn't ring a bell.
His exploits were greater than Harriet Tubman. He helped to fund her 300 back and forth.
Yes. I didn't know his name. White dude, right?
Black.
No, black.
But
okay, man.
His homies were white.
Okay.
Garrett Thomas.
So he's like
different
me.
Other ones. Yeah. Us. Okay? Because I'm not far off either with that.
Yeah.
And they got their monies together to help fund what she was doing. These are your unsung. And I do a Black history program called Heroes and Sheroes of the Underground Railroad in black and white. And I give black and white heroes and sheroes who put their life on the line for enslaved black folk. And when I tell those stories, and I have the PowerPoints on them, and it makes them run out to go get that book, The Underground Railroad by William Steele. And when you read that book, you're going to say, how come we don't do a movie on him? Why? Because he's got stories in there. He would hide them in the cemetery because he knew if somebody were to tell families, it was because of him that families were reunited. Because he was in Philadelphia, and when my wife and I went to Philadelphia, we went to his home. I found where his home was. At that time, 2019, it was not on the National Historical Landmarks list. It should have been. Mm-hmm. So when we went on the street, my wife and I kissed the porch, and then I'm looking through the window, and I got the books, the pictures on Facebook, and my wife's taking pictures. So the mailman, black, or as I say, Hebrew, comes, mm-hmm. and he's walking through the neighborhood. I said, excuse me, young man. Yes. I said, you know what this house is? He says, no, I deliver mail next door. And I said, you of all people should know what this house is. I took my phone out and I showed him William Steele, and I showed him his address, and I showed him how many enslaved folk who were escaped from the South ran away and was brought to his home, and he harbored them, then paid a man to put them on a boat to take them up to Canada.
That to make that to add to emphasize what you're talking about is, and I have a question I have to ask you after I said it, but isn't the consequences, if he would have got caught, he would have been killed, right?
Of course.
Yeah, because
got to make an example out of that.
Yeah, because some people think about that. We don't think, most people, and I've got this when I did my own research into history, is that we tend to look at through a modern lens. Like if you smuggle dope, right?
Right.
Even if you smuggle
Great
humans,
point you're making.
You smuggle humans,
right?
You're not getting killed for that.
Right.
You're going to go to jail,
right?
And you might be able to get a good lawyer, maybe.
Bingo.
Not back then.
Great point.
You're getting you might get tried, convicted, and executed before you even get into a trial.
Right.
Like you're by the neighborhood.
Right.
So.
And the second part to that, you'll be thrown into enslavement.
Yeah.
In the deep South, where you wished you were dead.
What rappers call the dirty.
Right. That's it. That's it.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
And that's a great point that you made. And that's
because you gotta look it through the lens of the time.
Brother. You putting your life, and this guy was an American hero. Not just a black, an American hero. Yeah. He put his life on, and
imagine how much stress that he'd be under on a daily.
Brother.
I get nervous when I kind of claim something maybe I shouldn't on taxes. And this dude up here.
Brother, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, and mind, and love thy neighbor as thyself. When I preach that sermon and bring him up on the Black History program, on the Black History Sabbath, how people loved their neighbor to death, black and white. And these stories I bring out in this PowerPoint that unearths this, that makes white, instead of looking at the black and saying, oh man, all they're gonna do is beat up on us. When they hear this, they feel proud. I wanna go out and save some person of color now. They feel like that.
Yeah.
Because it's the truth though. I'm not doing it to titillate and to make them feel, I'm doing it to tell the truth. These people, what they say, let others, the Bible said, let others speak well of thee. These people in their grave. If I do King, if I've done stuff with Rosa Parks and Maya Angelou, I have, and I praise the Most High for it, and others, they all stand on the shoulders of these unsung heroes.
Yes, exactly.
And if we don't say their story, we're doing them a disservice. So I love it that you did that for your class. Don't give me the Martin Kings. Give me.
Well, let me tell you something. I paid the price.
Oh, all right.
I paid the price.
But you're going to be blessed. You're going to be blessed.
I hope so.
You paid a temporary price, but you're going to be blessed in the end.
Yes. And maybe God.
And that's going to be your exclamation point to your book.
Yes.
Because now we have an exclamation point to the book. The book, boom, and it ends like this. Yeah. That's your happily ever after.
I mean, it was so crazy, my situation trying to teach these things.
Right.
That So, but people don't realize when you're going through, like, say, for example, with me, I was going through is it called civil rights when it's racism? Mm-hmm. Civil rights, I know it's kind of broad now. The definitions change, you know.
Civil liberties.
Civil liberties. Mm-hmm. I didn't even get backing I got minimal backing from my teachers union. I got minimal backing everywhere. And if you guys get an opportunity, people listening, just Google Temecula School District racism. And I'm not the only one.
Right.
There's a lot of lawsuits, even by students. They're actually being sued by the state of California for racism. Okay. The school district. The school district is, and then the school board is being sued separately. And so, and Temecula, I think, is the only city in the state of California that refuses to honor Martin Luther King's holiday and Black History Month. They refuse. And so you could see that in the news. But I'm not trying to turn this to a whole racial podcast here. But my point is that people who go through things like that like when I was in the middle of that, the stress is 10 from 1 to 10 because it's not just you're dealing with it and you're fighting and trying to navigate it. Because people used to give me advice, but if I was you, I would do this or I would have done that when I was there. I said, listen, that was my occupation. Right. I'm trying to that's my job.
Right.
You lose your job, that kind of sets your life in a tailspin. I have responsibility. I have a mother that's 100% disabled, and I have a son that's 100% disabled. I have a lot of responsibilities on my plate. You know, I can't. You know, so people don't look at it that way. Or like even Martin Luther King. If I was Martin Luther King, you know. Do you know what kind of stress they're under? Right. Didn't they say he had hypertension when he died?
His heart was like that of a 75-year-old man.
Yeah,
he was 39.
Remember I told you my heart condition?
Yeah.
I'll show you the initial reading. My heart's up there at that age. It was up at that age. Man. From the hypertension of stress and all this other stuff that had happened.
Stress kills.
It messed up my vascular system.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that, brother.
No, oh, thank you. Yeah, hey, God's working on it.
We'll pray for healing.
But I have a question. But other thing too is talking about not knowing your history. As I was doing, you know, like I've told you off, you know, privately about how I did the research. My sister and I were doing research to try to track my family back to slavery, and so I got in touch with other black tennies that I might grow up with. And like, hey, well, you know, blah, blah. And I didn't make the connection that the white connection. Like you're more clever than me. I'm just spoon-fed. Like even my older brother, I didn't make the connection. Maybe you're not related to me. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Or completely, because you're just a different nature. My sister and I, by nature, normally we're compliant. We compliant. I was a product of my environment. I changed. I became something that I'm not.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's weird though, that malevolent piece, it stays with me.
Right.
But, and I ask God to take it from me, but it's there. I can go dark. I could do bad things. And it's scary to know that I could do bad things.
But that dark can also be a positive thing if you use it right. Remember Peter.
Yes.
Yah used that bad temperedness for his glory. And and that will give you wisdom. That malevolence can give you wisdom if you allow it.
Yes. But there's a psychologist, and I'll get back to this part. There's a psychologist named Jordan Peterson I spoke to you about before. I sent you some videos, but I know you're busy and you probably don't have time to get to it.
I'm going to get to it.
But Jordan Peterson talks about that nature in you, that darkness.
Yeah.
And he explains that everyone has it in them, some more than others. And he says the key to it, to harnessing it, is recognizing and acknowledging it. Anyone, he says, for example, anyone can kill. Yeah. Anyone could kill. I can go dark. Yeah. I know I can. I can totally. I'm a what you call it, due to trauma. I'm a super empath. I could feel energy off of people, whatever. I can dial that down and do the most darkest things to people. I'll just put it that way. And I'm not gonna lie, I've tried. God, I'm grateful that I've never actually. I'm gonna be real. That I've never killed anyone, but I've tried. I'm gonna be honest. I've tried, and I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to, statute of limitation. I don't think there's statute of limitation on attempted murder. So I would say I've tried.
Right.
And he said you recognize it, and he began to. And Dr. Peterson explained that. And remember, he studied human behavior for over 20 years, research and studied like actual people and did therapy to get these profiles and things of people. And he said, look at this. Let me tell you something. Because people were disagreeing with him. No. Some people are born good, especially atheists. Some people are good. You could do good, I heard. He goes, let me tell you something. And him himself was agnostic at the time, didn't know what he believed. He said, let me tell you something. You could take a white woman. He's white himself. You could take a white woman who grew up in upper middle class, living in the suburbs with 2 kids, never been in any kind of physical violence in her life, right? Just never. She doesn't. She's just a half glass full personality type.
Right.
Take that woman, and he said, you put a gun in her house and let someone break in and try to harm her kids. She will kill that man and sleep that night with no guilt. He goes, you need to acknowledge that is in you. Yeah. Just because we live in these buildings now and we drive cars and we wear suits, no, we are still those people that lived off the land and had to kill an animal to eat and maybe even kill another person to try to attack your tribe or your children. That is still in you. But people forget that so you need to acknowledge that, because then you won't end up one of these people who end up in court or in a situation goes, I can't believe I did that.
Temporary insanity.
Plead, or just they didn't know that they could do it. You need to acknowledge all the darkness in you. And Jordan Peterson now is a Christian as of the last few years. After 30 years of human research, he became a Christian like the last few years. Like he came to this conclusion. First, he went to Judaism and studied Judaism, and then it's amazing. His life, his belief system flowed like the Bible, Judaism, Old Testament to the New. But going back to the thing of studying my history, I'm still piecing together. I wasn't clever like you, and I was in my early 20s, and I was dating, not married yet, and dating my wife at the time. We were just we're faithful and everything. And what I did was, I said I went to one of the black tennies, and there's not a lot of them. And it's weird because it's very similar to my sister and I. Like tennies don't have kids. We have one, maybe two at the most, but like one. We don't have these large families. And so they're like, yeah, well, you're related to a Tenney that lived out in Santa Barbara, and there's a fire station. It's Christopher Tenney, and it's Tenney, like your name is supposed to be spelled, blah, blah. So I was like, well, man, I'm on this treasure hunt. So I go there. And I go to Santa Barbara, found the fire station. It's like near State Street, right in the main area. I know what it's at. Yeah, and I went to that station. I knocked on the door. I said, "Hey, my name's Kenny Tenney, and I'm related to Christopher Tenney, whose name's on the front of this building." They go, "Oh man, we got a picture of him." But first they looked at me odd. They go, "We got a picture of him in the hallway. If you want, we got a whole historical section inside. You want to come inside?" Yeah. And I told my wife, "Yeah, come inside."
He's a white guy.
White dude? Yeah. No, he was like Hispanic or something. He said, "Come inside." But he was kind of looking at me. He didn't know if I was being a prankster. Right. Or, you know what I'm saying? I think he was kind of looking like, this dude's going to do something stupid, Because I'm pretty sure firemen or anyone dealing with the public has seen a lot of stupidity. And so I told my wife, "Come on, my girlfriend, come on, let's go inside." We go inside and we look at the wall and the stuff the wars that Christopher Tenney got, and we go there. It's a white dude. I didn't make the connection at the time. I forgot that I'm related. Yeah. And then some of the firemen, they're like, "Hey, this guy's related." So their firemen are there too in the station. Oh, and they were shaking my hand. And my wife looked at me. She couldn't even hold it in. My girlfriend looked at me. She just fell out on the floor laughing.
Because when you said Santa Barbara, that's why I go up there to speak sometimes. I said, "Must be white."
Yeah, because I'm blood related to the Tennies. Right. But at the time, I'm thinking I'm gonna see some black dude on the thing. Or the main picture, this stuff. Yeah. So I was like, man. But that was an interesting journey. And remember, I told you the family reunion, which I'll get into a different thing. The Tenney family reunion that me and my sister got uninvited to when they found out we were black. But that's, but I know we're going long, and I'm going to obviously bring you on again.
Yeah, let's do it again.
But I have a question, and this is a theological, spiritual life question. Because obviously we got to continue your story. We didn't get to all your story.
Yes, right.
But I have to wonder, the reason why this podcast is called For a Reason, because I was told everything happens for a reason. And I believe it's true. And actually, Jordan Peterson, in a video I told you, he talks about someone had actually, there's a short clip. These clips I sent you in like 45 seconds.
Okay.
And he was someone asked him a question about, do people reap what they sow? And he said, listen, I could tell you this. He goes, I've studied human behavior for decades at this point. And this is a recent video, like in the last few years. He goes, when you do something bad to people, he didn't even go Bible on them. And when you do something bad to people, especially if it's really bad, he goes, we exist in a kind of balanced spiritual world. And he says it's a mixture of space, time, interaction. He goes, you twist it and you turn it. And that's what you do when you hurt another person, do bad things. And he goes, but the universe is always balanced. It's going to bounce back. There's an equal in every action. There's an equal and opposite reaction, basically what he was saying. He goes, in my decades of studying human behavior, I have never seen someone get away clean with doing someone wrong. Wow. He said, you will always be able to see, because let me tell you something. Next time something bad happens to you, look inward. I guarantee you, it might not be a straight line, but you'll be able to make connections to the bad things that you have done to other people that has led to this negative thing happening to you. Wow. You will always see it. But the thing of seeing the connection of karma, or what they call reaping what you sow, it's there, but you have to look inwards. But you will see it. He goes, I'm telling you, I've studied human behavior. I've studied people for decades, their lives, followed them. And it always comes back, but it's the same for good.
Right.
It's the same for good. And so, but my question
Praise
to you,
God for that.
yes, but my question to you is from a theological standpoint, and some people don't know what theology means. Theos is God.
Mm-hmm.
Ology is like the study of God.
Study of God. Mm-hmm.
From a theological standpoint, do you believe? What are your thoughts on everything happens for a reason? Do you think there's a purpose behind everything that happens in a person's life, especially the big things? Because I'm pretty sure there's people right now that are grieving a loss, maybe celebrating a win, and everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
I said real clearly and cleanly. King Solomon said it best in the book of Ecclesiastes that there is a time and place for everything under the sun, and that the Most High rules everything that happens under the sun. And if you believe in the Most High, you know it goes with the old song we learned when we were young. He's got the whole world in his hands. And he does. And his word will not return void. If he says it's going to happen, you shall reap what you sow. It will happen. And even before I say, I'm learning it by Donnie McClurkin, his ways. His ways are not our ways. His path is not our path, but it is the way to get to the kingdom of God. He gives us the Bible, which the Bible is the playbook. If we want to get to pay dirt, we've got to read the playbook. He don't have to give us the playbook, but we got all the tacklers there to keep us from pay dirt. But in order to get to pay dirt, he's telling us, read this book. We read the book. We're able to juke here, juke there, avoid that linebacker, avoid that you got all your defensive backs and so on and so forth. If we want to get into pay dirt, we got to read the playbook. He's saying, I want to save you. In order to save you, just do what I say. I won't put on, and then he makes it easy. I won't put on you anything that you can't bear. He promises us that. So no matter what we've done, he will not allow us to be tempted beyond our capability to overcome it. That's love. So he's basically, I want you to get here. But he's giving, but in order to get there, we don't start from here. He lets us start from here. Yeah. He's saying, I'm gonna do half of it. Matter of fact, I'm gonna do 75% of it. You just do 25. That's what this whole thing is all about. And he puts everything in his book. And he says, just trust me. Obey me. See, people want to leave that part out. I just love him and have faith. Yeah, but that's that old word too. You have to obey him. Because the sign of your love for him is your obedience to him. And when we love, obey, and trust, he will make it up to us. So if he is the sovereign creator of the universe, if he is omniscient, all-knowing, if he's omnipotent, all-powerful, if he is omnipresent everywhere at once, and praise him, if he is omnibenevolent, all-loving where we can't fathom that love, then everything is for a reason. As Solomon said, a time and a season under the sun, because he is the ultimate director and we're all actors. We're all actors. He's the ultimate protagonist. There is an antagonist. We are the actors. So he then tests us. He tests us to prove us so that we will be eligible to fit into his kingdom. Satan tempts us to prove that we don't belong in Yah's kingdom, but we belong in his. So there's test to prove us in the positive, and there's temptations to cut us down in the negative. So there's this war that's going on, but we already know how it's going to end. And he's saying, if you read my book, if you have a relationship with me, you pray, you read, you have faith, you love me, and the way you love me, or love is faith and faith is love. The song goes, it'll come to me. But when we have love, faith, and obedience, these are the ingredients. And when we have those ingredients, nothing happens haphazardly. Nothing happens spur of the moment. Everything is in Yah's design. He said to Jeremiah, before you were, I knew you. He said, Jeremiah, I already knew you before you were. So that's what he is before us. Before Kenny, he knew you. Before you knew yourself, before you were alive, he already had his plans for you. Do we deviate from the plans? Yes. But if we trust him, we will go off the beaten road, like I have gone, like many of us, into the wilderness. But he cuts out a road for us. If we decide, Lord, I want to get back on that road, he allowed, no matter how far away we're from that road, we can be all up in the bushes. He'll carve out a road from us to get us back to the main road that leads to the kingdom of God. So nothing happens without his plan. He has to sign it. And Satan can't do anything without Yah's signature. And if Yah gives the signature, it's to prove us for his glory. Toughen our fiber, because he knows where I'm about to take you. Your fiber needs to be toughened. So I'm allow Satan to test you. I'm going to allow him even to tempt you. But if you hold on to my promises, if you never let go, no matter how strong the will to let go is, but you still find a way to hold on, I'm going to make it up to you. Because I love you, I'm omnibenevolent. I love you more than you can ever know. So everything is for a reason in his own time.
Historically, when Jesus walked the earth, how did they pronounce his name, or what's taught?
So we figure from deducing that there was the Hebrew, Greek language, Aramaic language. My understanding, it would have been most likely that with a version of Yah in it. Yahusha, Yeshua. Some say Yeshua. Some say Yahushua. Yahuwah.
Where did Jesus come from?
That comes from the Greek translation of the Greek turned to the Latin to the English. Because in the Greek it was Jesus, and then it started to take on a form, going on and on, over to finally Jesus. But we know that his name could definitely have not been Jesus.
But Jesus will still work if you pray in that name, right?
He says, in your ignorance, I winked on you, but now that you know, I call all men. So when you don't know, you don't know. But when you do, because I've had many people say that, well, I called out on his name and his name this, because he loves us so much, he'll take us in our ignorance because we don't know.
Because you're praying from the heart anyway.
Because you're praying from the heart, and he looks upon your heart. What the song says, he looked beyond my heart and sees my needs. But when you do know, they said, now what did the commission, the singer say? Now that you've come out of the darkness, you must turn on the light for a friend. Don't leave them there groping in darkness, but tell them how they can be born again. Yeah. So the goal is each one teach one. Mm-hmm. Once you know, you go back and you tell somebody. If they reject it, now you're judged on what you decided not to know. You see? Yeah. So for me, the more I was reading, the more I'm not calling him by his right name. And then why was his name changed? See? Why then there's a rabbit hole now. There's the rabbit hole. Why don't we call, if my name is David, then, there may be distortions of it, David, because in the Hebrew, Dawid, but it still sounds like David. But you get Yahusha or Yahushua, but then you turn around, Jesus. You say, well, wait a minute, why did it change all the way? then you go down that hole.
That hole.
Then you try. But when you don't know, he loves us so much. That's where that omnibenevolence comes in.
Yes, you know what makes sense is because when they would pray back in the Old Testament when they came out of Egypt, they'd pray just to the God of Abraham.
Right.
They didn't know.
Right. But he had a name.
Yeah, they didn't even know. They had no idea.
Yeah, but when you call out his name, and David says it, Psalm 68:4, but we know there's not a J, so we know it had to be the Y. He says praise Jah, but it's really praise Yah. And David calls him that, and that's the man after his own heart.
I could tell you one thing as of late, because we gotta wrap this up.
That's
we
right.
went too long, but we're gonna do another part.
We got to.
And we gotta get you your own podcast. We got to.
I would love to.
I started praying and referring to God as Yahweh or Yah.
Yes.
And Jesus as Yeshua.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is a placebo effect, but I feel different. Like it feels like I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
Like it's coming on. And I feel even the type of prayer that comes out with that,
right.
It's different.
Yep.
It's different. It's my soul. Like sometimes I've been praying by myself.
Right.
And I'm hearing what I'm saying. So I don't do it in my head. I say it.
Right.
I'm like, did I just say that?
Yeah.
Like it's saying stuff. And it's weird. I can actually now, because when I used to pray before, like say if I was praying for you, please, Lord, be with David. And, he got in a car accident, make sure his leg heals up, God, and be with the doctors. Now when I pray this way, Yahweh or Yah,
you call him by his name.
I could visualize.
Yeah.
I could see your leg.
Yeah.
I could see, like it takes me to another place. So I just
you're
wanted
operating in truth, man, and nothing. He said, "Those who worship me must worship me in spirit and in truth."
Yes,
and it's never about hate. It's all about truth and love.
Yes,
that's what it's all about.
Yes, and one thing too, and if you don't mind, we'll just wrap up with this. It's from Jordan Peterson.
Okay.
Jordan Peterson, because he travels around and does these seminars, and then you're free to ask him questions. Most people that used to attack him were people who would argue over gender.
Okay.
Over gender. Why am I not a girl? Why not? And so, and he would break stuff down, and he goes, you don't have ovaries, biologically, whatever. He would break stuff down, and that's what kind of really, really put him on the map, but also got him shadow banned.
Okay.
But people show up to his seminars, but then the vast majority, 99.9% of his stuff is self-help, but now he has a Bible series, and he goes to the history of the Bible and from a psychological standpoint. It's very good stuff. But the thing is, he was trying to explain to someone, well, really? The Bible? And he tried to explain to this guy, look, this Bible, cover to cover, or whatever, add the Apocrypha to it, right?
Right.
This is less than a grain of sand. Like, say if God's all the beaches. God is so big. This is the most rudimentary, broken down, simplified thing we could even look at or to even comprehend. There's no way we could comprehend God. It's impossible.
Right.
He'd cease to be God. If you could sit there and study something, go, I understand God, then you've equalized. He goes, this book is like basically Idiot's Guide to God, but even lower than that.
Right.
And I was like, man, he said, this is just like a glimpse, And he talked about how the Bible, who did God show his back to? Was it Moses? Yeah. Because Moses couldn't even take the front.
Right.
Yeah. And
he saw the back.
Yeah, saw the back. And he was like, God is too much.
Too much for us.
It's too much. Yep. Yeah. This right here, we don't even understand this.
We don't understand it.
Yeah. And this is just a minute amount. Just think about that. You could study the Bible for the rest of your life. Right. You could have studied it through your whole life.
Right.
You still won't understand a grain of that.
Right.
And this is just a grain of God.
That's it. That's
yeah.
it.
And I was like, I never looked at it from that standpoint. I was like, man, that's pretty deep. And that's what he's come to realize. Like, God is just too big.
Yep.
He's too big. He's too big.
But then he loves us enough to dumb it down so that we can understand him.
Yeah.
It's love, brother. That
not just dumb it down.
Yeah.
Become one of us.
Bingo.
You know what I'm saying?
Bingo.
Find me a king.
Amen.
A human king, right?
Yeah.
That's willing to not just set aside all his stuff, like one of those sheiks in the Middle East, but gamble it all and say, man, listen, I'm going to do something that has never been done.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Never been done. I'm even going to set aside, no security, no guards, no extra powers, no, can I call a friend lifeline? I'm just going to go in there and do it.
Right.
And if I lose, we all lose. You know what I'm saying? I'm betting on me. Yeah, because I'm betting on you.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. There's so many layers, man. There's so many layers. But thank you for coming out.
Man, thank you for having
me. I think this is probably the longest podcast episode I've ever had. But we're gonna split this up. But I want to bring you on, and we got to finish your story. I apologize, guys, for not getting to it because we got sidetracked. But thank you.
Yes,
I want to thank you, man. Thank you,
man.
appreciate it.
Thank you, my brother.
All right,
brother.